Get out of my house, Tyler. Now. I never thought I'd say those words to my own son, but there he was, standing in my living room in an expensive suit. My husband had been dead for exactly 4 hours. This is the same son who abandoned me 15 years ago when I had nothing. Now he's back, and the timing, well, let's just say it's interesting. You see, something happened at that funeral. Something that changed everything between us forever. And what Tyler doesn't know is that my husband was a very smart man, much smarter than Tyler gave him credit for. When Tyler walked into that lawyer's office 3 days later, he thought he knew exactly what was going to happen. He had it all figured out. Every angle, every legal loophole, every way to get what he wanted. He was wrong. What happened in that room? I still can't believe it myself. But I'll tell you this much. When we walked out of there, only one of us was smiling. And it wasn't Tyler. My name is Gloria, and I'm about to tell you how everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and justice got turned completely upside down. But first, you need to understand how we got here. Because this story doesn't start at the funeral. It starts much earlier, back when I was working double shifts just to survive, and my son decided I wasn't worth sticking around for. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of incredible women who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. I was wiping down the same sticky counter for the third time when the bell above the door chimed at 2 a.m. The Roadhouse Diner was usually dead at this hour, except for truckers grabbing coffee, but when I looked up, it wasn't a trucker walking in. It was my son Tyler, and he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. His designer sneakers squeaked against our worn linoleum as he approached the counter. I'd been working this double shift since 6 p.m. the day before, and I still had 4 hours until my replacement showed up. At 50 years old, these doubles were getting harder, but the bills weren't getting any smaller. Mom, we need to talk. Tyler's voice had that edge I'd been hearing more and more lately. I poured him coffee without asking. After 25 years of being his mother, I knew he'd want it black with 2 sugars. You're up late, honey. Everything okay? Tyler ran his hands through his hair, the same nervous gesture he'd had since he was little. Look, I need to borrow some money, just temporarily. My stomach tightened. Tyler, you still owe me from last month, the car payment, remember? This is different. It's an investment opportunity. This guy I know has made crazy money with crypto. All I need is 3 grand to get started. I stopped wiping the counter. $3,000? Tyler, I don't have that kind of money just lying around. What about your emergency fund? The way he said it made my blood run cold. How do you know about that? His face flushed red. I saw your bank statement on the kitchen table. Mom, you're sitting on $3,000 while I'm stuck living in that dump apartment, driving a car that breaks down every other week. That money is for emergencies, real emergencies, like when the rent goes up or if I get sick and can't work. This is a real emergency. Do you want me to be stuck in this dead-end town forever? Working at places like this? He gestured around the diner with pure disgust. Heat rose in my chest. Places like this put food on our table. This place paid for your college before you dropped out. College was a waste of time. Traditional education is dead, Mom. You have to think bigger. Bigger? Tyler, you've been thinking bigger for 5 years while I work 2 jobs to keep us afloat. He leaned across the counter, dropping his voice low. That's exactly the problem. You think small. You've always thought small. No wonder Dad left. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I gripped the edge of the counter to keep from falling over. Don't you dare bring your father into this. Why not? It's true, isn't it? He got tired of your attitude, your acceptance of mediocrity, just like I am. I stared at this person I'd sacrificed everything for and barely recognized him. Your father left because he couldn't handle responsibility. Don't rewrite history to make yourself feel better about asking for handouts. Handouts? His voice rose, and I glanced nervously toward the kitchen, hoping my manager wouldn't come out. I'm your son. Investing in my future should be your priority, not hoarding money like some paranoid old woman. I'm 50 years old, Tyler. Not dead. And that money stays where it is. He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Fine, I'll figure it out myself. I always do. He stormed toward the door, then spun around for one final blow. You know what your problem is, Mom? You're so afraid of losing what little you have that you can't see opportunities when they're right in front of you. You're pathetic. The door slammed behind him, making the bell clang violently. I stood there alone under those harsh fluorescent lights, my hands shaking as I picked up his untouched coffee cup. When I finally dragged myself home at 8 a.m., I went straight to my bedroom dresser. The small metal box where I kept my emergency fund was still there, but when I opened it, my heart stopped beating. Empty. I called the bank with trembling fingers. After what felt like forever on hold, a representative confirmed what I already knew. Yesterday at 3 p.m., while I was at work, someone had used my debit card to withdraw $3,000 from my savings account. I sank onto my bed, staring at that empty box. Tyler had stolen my card, cleaned out my emergency fund, and then had the absolute nerve to come ask me for the money he'd already taken. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. Mom, I'm sorry it had to be this way, but you would never have understood. This investment is going to change everything. I'll pay you back triple when it pays off. Trust me. Another message popped up. P.S. I'm leaving town for a while. Don't try to find me. I need space to figure things out without your negativity dragging me down. Maybe someday you'll thank me for having the courage to think bigger. I read those messages 3 times before they sank in. My son had stolen my money, betrayed my trust, and was running away like a coward. I tried calling him, straight to voicemail. His room was mostly empty when I checked. Clothes gone, computer gone, all those expensive things he'd somehow acquired over the past year, all missing. On his pillow was a handwritten note. Mom, I know you're probably mad right now, but someday you'll understand. I can't stay in this small-minded place anymore. You raised me to accept scraps, but I want more than that. I want a life that matters. Don't contact me until you're ready to support my dreams instead of crushing them. P.S. Your emergency fund was never really an emergency fund anyway. You were just scared to live. At least now it's doing something important. Tyler? I crumpled up that note and threw it across the room. Then I sat on his bed and cried harder than I had since his father walked out on us 15 years ago. The next few weeks were the darkest of my life. Without that emergency fund, I couldn't make rent. My landlord, Mrs. Patterson, gave me 2 weeks to catch up or face eviction. I started missing shifts at the diner because I'd stay up all night crying, then oversleep. My manager, Joe, pulled me aside after I showed up late for the 3rd time. Gloria, you're one of my best workers, but I can't keep covering for you. What's going on? I couldn't tell him my own son had stolen from me and abandoned me. The shame was too much. Just some family issues. I'll get it together. But I wasn't getting it together. I found myself staring at Tyler's empty room, wondering what I'd done wrong. Had I really been too negative, too small-minded? Maybe he was right about everything. I had to move out of our apartment and into a tiny studio across town. The walls were paper thin and my neighbors fought constantly. I took a 3rd job cleaning office buildings at night, dragging myself from the diner to the office complex, then home for maybe 4 hours of sleep before starting over. 3 months after Tyler left, I was wiping down tables at the diner when this older gentleman in the corner booth caught my attention. He'd been coming in every Tuesday and Thursday for weeks, always ordering the same thing: coffee, wheat toast, and scrambled eggs. But unlike most customers, he actually looked at me when I served him. Really looked at me, like I was a person worth seeing. You work too hard, he said one Thursday evening as I refilled his coffee. I laughed, but it came out bitter. Bills don't pay themselves. I'm Vincent Romano, he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, calloused from years of real work. I used to own Romano Construction before I retired. Gloria Martinez. And I know who you are. Your company built half this town. Vincent smiled. The better half, I hope. He paused, studying my face. You look tired, Gloria. Really tired. Something about the kindness in his voice almost made me cry right there in the middle of the dinner rush. It's been a rough year. Want to talk about it? I shook my head quickly. You don't want to hear my problems. Try me. For some reason, maybe because I was so starved for human connection, I found myself telling this stranger about Tyler. Not everything, but enough. How my son had left town, how I was struggling to make ends meet, how I felt like I'd failed as a mother. Vincent listened without judgment, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. My wife died 2 years ago, he said finally. Cancer. We never had kids of our own, though we tried for years. I would have given anything to have a son or daughter, even one who broke my heart. He looked directly at me. Some people don't deserve the love they're given, Gloria. That's not your fault. Before I could respond, he left a $50 tip on a $12 meal and walked out. The next week, Vincent came in again. This time he stayed until closing, just talking. He told me about his late wife, Maria, how they'd built their construction business from nothing. He'd grown up poor in Fresno, worked construction since he was 16, saved every penny until he could start his own company. Maria used to say I worked too hard, he said with a sad smile. She was probably right, but we wanted to build something that would last. Did you build something that lasts? The business, yes, but what good is success if you have no one to share it with? Over the following months, Vincent became a regular fixture in my life. He'd show up during my breaks, bringing me coffee from the good place downtown instead of the burned stuff we served at the diner. When my ancient car broke down, he paid for the repairs before I could even ask. When I protested, he just shrugged. Friends help friends, Gloria. Let me be your friend. I wasn't used to kindness without strings attached. Tyler had always made me feel like I owed him something, just for existing. His father had made love feel like a burden I could never carry properly. But Vincent was different. He never made me feel small or stupid or like I should be grateful for scraps. One evening, about 6 months after we'd started talking, Vincent waited until the diner was empty except for us. Gloria, I need to tell you something, he said, looking nervous for the first time since I'd known him. My heart sank. Here it comes, I thought. The catch. The thing he wants in return. I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. I know that probably sounds crazy. I'm 68 years old, set in my ways, probably too old to be starting over, but you make me feel alive again. I stared at him, speechless. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, he continued. I just needed you to know. You deserve to know that you're worth loving, Gloria, really loving, not the kind of love that comes with conditions or complaints. That night, I went home to my tiny studio and looked at myself in the mirror for the first time in months. Really looked. I saw a woman who'd been beaten down by life but was still standing. A woman who'd given everything to people who didn't deserve it but still had love left to give. Maybe Vincent was right. Maybe I was worth loving after all. I said yes to Vincent 3 weeks later. Not to marriage, not yet, but to trying, to letting someone care about me without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Our first real date was dinner at Romano's, the fancy Italian place downtown. I'd never eaten anywhere that required reservations before. I wore my one good dress, the black one I'd bought for job interviews years ago, and still felt underdressed. You look beautiful, Vincent said when he picked me up, and I actually believed him. Over candlelit dinner, he told me more about his life, how he'd started Romano Construction with a used pickup truck and a toolbox, how he and Maria had worked 18-hour days for the first decade, living in a trailer on job sites, saving every penny, how they'd built their company into one of the most respected contractors in Central California. We were going to travel when we retired, he said quietly. See Europe? Maybe take one of those cruises Maria always talked about. But the cancer moved too fast. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Don't be sorry. Be here with me now. That's what Maria would want. Vincent courted me like I was something precious. Flowers delivered to the diner, little notes tucked under my windshield wipers, surprise picnics in Kern River Park on my days off. He never pressured me for anything physical, never made me feel like I owed him something for his kindness. 6 months into our relationship, he took me to see his house for the first time. It sat on 5 acres outside Bakersfield, a sprawling ranch-style home with a 3-car garage and a swimming pool I'd only seen in magazines. "This is too much," I whispered, standing in his marble-floored entryway. "This is just a house, Gloria. It's been empty since Maria died. Houses need people in them to mean anything." He showed me Maria's garden, now overgrown and wild. Her sewing room, untouched since she'd passed. Photos of them together covering 43 years of marriage, from young and broke to successful and gray-haired. "I'm not trying to replace her," I said carefully. "And I'm not trying to replace Tyler," Vincent replied. "We both loved people who can't love us back the way we deserve. That doesn't mean we stop deserving love." A year after our first date, Vincent proposed, not with some elaborate production, but on a Tuesday night at the diner after my shift, right there at his usual booth. "Marry me, Gloria," he said simply. "Let's build something together." "I don't have anything to bring to a marriage," I said. "No money, no property, no fancy education. You have you. That's everything I want." We married at the courthouse on a Thursday morning. Vincent wore his best suit. I wore a simple blue dress we'd picked out together. The only witnesses were Vincent's lawyer, Frank Morrison, and my supervisor, Joe, from the diner. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. "I want a prenup," I told Vincent the night before the wedding. He looked at me like I'd suggested we jump off a cliff. "Absolutely not. Vincent, you're worth millions. I work at a truck stop diner. People will think I'm a gold digger." "Let them think whatever they want. When I say till death do us part, I mean everything I have becomes ours. End of discussion." Moving into Vincent's house felt like stepping into someone else's life. The master bathroom was bigger than my old studio apartment. The kitchen had granite countertops and appliances I was afraid to touch. I kept expecting someone to tell me I didn't belong there. But Vincent was patient. He taught me how to use the fancy coffee machine, showed me which thermostat controlled which part of the house, laughed when I hung my work uniforms next to his expensive suits in the walk-in closet. "It's our house now," he'd remind me whenever I got overwhelmed. "Make it feel like home." I quit the night cleaning job first, then eventually left the diner when Vincent convinced me I didn't need to work 3 jobs anymore. For the first time in my adult life, I had time to breathe, time to read books, tend Maria's garden, learn to cook something besides diner food. Vincent introduced me to his world slowly. Charity galas, business dinners, the country club. I felt like an imposter in those designer dresses he bought me, but Vincent never let me feel alone. He'd hold my hand through every awkward conversation, whisper encouragement in my ear when some society wife looked down her nose at me. "You belong here because you're with me," he'd say, "and you're twice the woman any of them will ever be." The best part wasn't the money or the house or the fancy parties. It was how Vincent looked at me every morning like I was a miracle. He couldn't quite believe how he'd bring me coffee in bed, kiss my forehead, and say, "Good morning, beautiful wife." For 5 years, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. We traveled like he and Maria never got to. Italy, where Vincent cried at his grandfather's grave in Sicily. Ireland, where I discovered I actually liked wine when it wasn't the cheap stuff. Mexico, where Vincent proposed we renew our vows on the beach at sunset just because he felt like marrying me again. I thought about Tyler sometimes, wondered where he was, if his cryptocurrency investment had made him rich like he'd promised. But as the years passed, the hurt faded into something more like pity. He'd thrown away a mother's love for a gamble, and I'd found a man who cherished me like a treasure. I never tried to contact Tyler, and he never reached out to me. Vincent said that was probably for the best. Some people only come back when they want something, he told me one evening as we sat by the pool watching the sunset. You've built a good life, Gloria. Don't let anyone who doesn't deserve to be in it mess that up. I should have listened to him. Vincent's stroke happened on a Tuesday morning in March. One minute he was reading the newspaper at the breakfast table, complaining about the mayor's new traffic plan, and the next minute he was slumped over, coffee spilling across the financial section. The paramedic said I did everything right, called 911 immediately, stayed calm, gave them all his medical information. But nothing prepares you for watching the person you love most fighting for their life in a hospital bed, machines beeping around them like mechanical prayers. The next 72 hours are critical, Dr. Patel told me. The stroke was massive. Even if he recovers, there may be significant cognitive impairment. I didn't leave Vincent's side for 3 days. I held his hand, talked to him about our plans for summer, reminded him about the trip to Alaska we'd booked for our 6th anniversary. The nurses brought me coffee and told me to go home and rest, but I couldn't. What if he woke up and I wasn't there? On the 4th day, Vincent opened his eyes. Gloria. His voice was weak, slurred, but it was him. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Confused, he whispered. Everything's fuzzy. The doctors explained that Vincent had suffered significant brain damage. Some days he was almost his old self, other days he couldn't remember my name or where he was. He'd ask for Maria, his first wife, or get agitated when he couldn't find his work boots because he thought he had a construction job to get to. This is common with stroke patients, Dr. Patel assured me. The confusion, the memory issues, some patients improve with time and therapy, but Vincent wasn't improving. If anything, he was getting worse. After 2 weeks in the hospital, I brought him home and hired round-the-clock nurses. Our beautiful house became a medical facility filled with hospital equipment and the smell of antiseptic. That's when Tyler showed up. I was in the kitchen making lunch when the doorbell rang. Vincent was having one of his bad days, sleeping fitfully upstairs with the nurse monitoring him. I opened the door and nearly collapsed. Tyler stood on my porch looking like a completely different person. Gone was the scruffy 25-year-old who'd stolen my life savings. This Tyler wore an expensive suit, carried himself with confidence, and had that polished look of someone who'd been living well, very well. Hello, Mom. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. Tyler? I heard about Vincent's condition. I came as soon as I could. You heard? How did you hear? He stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of expensive cologne. I've been keeping tabs on you, making sure you were okay. His voice was smoother now, more practiced. I know I left things badly between us, and I've regretted that every day for the past 10 years. 10 years. Had it really been that long? I tried calling, he continued, but your number had changed. I didn't want to just show up out of nowhere, but when I heard Vincent was sick, I stared at my son, this stranger wearing Tyler's face, and felt something twist in my chest. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Part of me wanted to fall into his arms and cry, but mostly I just felt tired. You look good, I said finally. Tyler smiled, and for a moment he looked like the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I did well for myself, Mom. That investment I told you about, it paid off. Big time. I'm glad. Can I come in? I'd like to see Vincent, if that's okay. And we have a lot to catch up on. Against every instinct screaming at me to be careful, I stepped aside and let Tyler into my home. Vincent was awake when we went upstairs, staring out the window at Maria's garden. The nurse, a kind woman named Patty, was adjusting his IV. Vincent, honey, I said gently, you have a visitor. This is Tyler, my son. Vincent turned his head slowly, his eyes struggling to focus. Tyler. It's good to meet you, sir, Tyler said, extending his hand. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Vincent looked confused. Do I know you? This is Gloria's son, Patty explained patiently. He's come to visit. Gloria's son? Vincent's face brightened. She talks about you all the time. Where have you been?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Tyler glanced at me, then back at Vincent. "I've been living in Miami, working. I should have visited sooner." "Miami," Vincent repeated slowly. "That's far." For the next hour, Tyler sat by Vincent's bed, listening to confused stories about construction jobs from 30 years ago, about Maria's cooking, about places Vincent thought he needed to be. Tyler was patient, kind even, asking gentle questions and laughing at Vincent's rambling tales. "He seems like a good man," Tyler told me when we went back downstairs. "He is, the best man I've ever known." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "Mom, I want you to know how sorry I am about everything. The way I left, the things I said. I was young and stupid and angry at the world. You stole my emergency fund, I know, and I hate myself for it. But I paid it back with interest. I've been putting money in an account for you every month for the past 5 years, waiting for the right time to reconnect." He pulled out his phone, showed me a bank statement. "There's over $50,000 in there. It's yours." I stared at the screen, not trusting what I was seeing. "I made millions, Mom. That cryptocurrency investment was just the beginning. I've been involved in tech startups, real estate, all kinds of ventures. I'm not the broke kid who ran away anymore." "Then why now? Why come back now?" Tyler's expression grew serious. "Because Vincent is dying, isn't he? And you're going to need family when that happens. You're going to need support." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl, but I pushed the feeling away. This was my son, my only child. Maybe people really could change. "You can stay in your old room," I heard myself saying. "If you want to." Tyler smiled and it looked genuine. "I'd like that very much." That night, I called Vincent's lawyer, Frank Morrison, and told him Tyler had come home. I thought Vincent would be happy to know I wasn't alone anymore. I had no idea I'd just invited a wolf into my house. Tyler stayed for 3 weeks, and I have to admit, those were some of the easiest days since Vincent's stroke. Tyler helped with everything. He researched new treatments, coordinated with the doctors, even spelled me during the night shifts so I could get some real sleep for the first time in months. He was gentle with Vincent, patient during the confused episodes, and he seemed genuinely interested in Vincent's stories about the construction business. I started to think maybe I'd been wrong to doubt him. Maybe he really had changed. "You're a good son," I told him one evening as we sat in the kitchen after a particularly difficult day. Tyler looked up from his laptop where he'd been researching experimental stroke treatments. "I'm trying to make up for lost time, Mom. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be here for you now." Vincent died on a Thursday night in April, exactly 3 weeks after Tyler arrived. I was holding his hand when it happened. Tyler was there too, standing at the foot of the bed. Vincent had been unconscious for 2 days, his breathing shallow and labored. Then, just before midnight, he squeezed my hand one last time and whispered, "Tell Gloria, don't trust." His voice faded away before he could finish the sentence. "Don't trust what, baby?" I whispered, but Vincent was gone. Tyler put his hand on my shoulder. He was probably trying to say he trusts you to be okay without him. That's what I'd want to tell you if I were him. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. The funeral was held at St. Catherine's, the Catholic church where Vincent and I had attended Mass every Sunday. The place was packed. Vincent had employed half the town over the years, and everyone came to pay their respects. Frank Morrison gave a beautiful eulogy about Vincent's generosity and integrity. I spoke about how Vincent had saved my life by showing me what real love looked like. Tyler sat in the front pew beside me, holding my hand through the service. He looked appropriately somber in his expensive black suit, and several people commented on what a comfort it must be to have my son with me during this difficult time. After the burial, everyone gathered at our house for the reception. Tyler helped serve food, made conversation with Vincent's old business associates, and played the role of the devoted son perfectly. I was actually proud of him. That's when everything went to hell. Most of the guests had left, and I was in the kitchen cleaning up when I heard Tyler talking to someone in the living room. His voice had changed, lost that gentle tone he'd been using for weeks. It sounded cold, businesslike. The will reading is scheduled for Monday, I heard him say. My attorney will be present to represent my interests. I walked into the living room and found Tyler on his phone, standing in front of Vincent's portrait. When he saw me, he quickly ended the call. Who was that? I asked. Just business stuff, Mom. Nothing important. But something in his expression made my blood run cold. Tyler, what attorney? What interests? Tyler sat down on Vincent's favorite chair, the leather recliner where my husband used to read his morning paper. Mom, we need to talk about the practical matters. I know this is hard, but we have to be realistic about your situation. My situation? Vincent's gone. You're going to need help managing his estate, making sure you're taken care of. That's why I'm here. Frank Morrison is handling everything. Vincent made sure I'd be fine. Tyler leaned forward, his hands clasped together. Mom, I've been doing some research. California law is very specific about inheritance rights. As Vincent's stepson, I have certain legal claims to his estate. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What are you talking about? Look, I'm not trying to take anything away from you, but Vincent's will was written before we reconnected. He couldn't have known I'd be back in your life, helping to take care of both of you. I think if he'd lived longer, he would have wanted to provide for me too. You're not Vincent's stepson. You never even met him until 3 weeks ago. Tyler's expression hardened. I'm your son, Mom. You're Vincent's wife. That makes me his stepson under California law. My attorney confirmed it. You hired an attorney. When? I had to protect our interests. Vincent was worth over $15 million. That's serious money, Mom. Money that could take care of both of us for the rest of our lives. I stared at this person who looked like my son but sounded like a stranger. Tyler, Vincent left everything to me. Frank explained it all years ago. Wills can be contested, especially when there are surviving stepchildren who weren't properly provided for. I'm not being greedy here. I'm thinking about your future. What happens when you get sick, when you need long-term care? You'll need family to help you manage Vincent's wealth responsibly. You want Vincent's money. It wasn't a question. Tyler stood up, smoothing down his suit jacket. I want what's fair, what's legally mine, and I want to make sure you're protected. He moved closer to me, his voice softening again. Mom, I know this sounds calculating, but I've learned how the world works. Rich people don't stay rich by being careless with money. Vincent would want his legacy protected. You didn't even know Vincent. I got to know him these past 3 weeks. He talked about the business, about his investments, about how hard it was to build wealth from nothing. He'd want someone from the family to carry that forward. Frank Morrison chose that moment to walk into the living room, carrying a coffee cup and looking tired. Frank, I said, relief flooding my voice, Tyler seems to think he has some claim to Vincent's estate. Frank's expression went from tired to alert in seconds. He set down his coffee cup and looked directly at Tyler. And you are? Tyler Martinez, Gloria's son, and Vincent's stepson. Frank's eyebrows shot up. Vincent never mentioned having a stepson. We were estranged until recently, but blood is blood, and family is family. Actually, Frank said slowly, that's not how inheritance law works, but we can discuss this properly at the will reading on Monday. He turned to me, Gloria, are you okay? I looked at Tyler, really looked at him, and suddenly saw everything clearly. The expensive clothes, the polished confidence, the convenient timing of his return, the way he'd researched Vincent's condition before showing up. His patience during Vincent's final weeks hadn't been love. It had been an investment. No, I said quietly, I don't think I am okay. Tyler must have heard something in my voice because his expression shifted again, back to the concerned son routine. Mom, I can see you're upset. This isn't how I wanted to bring this up, but we're family. We should be working together, not against each other. Family, I repeated. You mean like when you stole my emergency fund and disappeared for 10 years? That was different. I was young and stupid. And now you're older and smarter. Smart enough to time your return for exactly when Vincent was most vulnerable. Tyler's mask finally slipped completely. Vincent was dying anyway, Mom. At least this way, his money can do some good for people who are still alive. Frank Morrison stepped between us. I think this conversation should wait until Monday. Tyler, I suggest you find somewhere else to stay until then. This is my mother's house. This is Gloria's house, Frank corrected firmly, and she can decide who stays and who goes. I looked at my son, this stranger who had pretended to love me just long enough to position himself for Vincent's inheritance, and made my choice. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, you're emotional right now. You're not thinking clearly. Get out of my house, Tyler, now. Tyler stared at me for a long moment, then shrugged. Fine, but this isn't over. I'll see you Monday at the will reading, with my attorney. After he left, Frank and I sat in Vincent's living room in silence. How bad is this going to be? I asked finally. Frank was quiet for a long moment. That depends, he said, on how well Vincent knew your son. Monday morning came too soon. I sat in Frank's conference room, my hands shaking as I waited for the will reading to begin. Tyler arrived with his attorney, a sharp-dressed woman who looked like she ate people for breakfast. They sat across from me like we were business adversaries instead of family. Before we begin, Frank announced, I need to address the matter Tyler raised at the funeral. Tyler, you claim inheritance rights as Vincent's stepson, correct? That's right, Tyler said confidently. California law clearly states that stepchildren have inheritance rights when not specifically excluded from a will. Frank nodded thoughtfully. And you believe Vincent would have provided for you if he'd lived longer and gotten to know you better? Absolutely. Vincent and I connected during those final weeks. He understood that I was trying to rebuild my relationship with my mother. Tyler's attorney leaned forward. My client has legitimate claims here. The will was executed before he reconciled with Mrs. Romano. Had Mr. Romano known about Tyler's return and his efforts to care for both his wife and stepfather during the final illness, he certainly would have made provisions. Interesting theory, Frank said mildly. He opened a thick folder on his desk. Let's see what Vincent actually thought about that. He pulled out a document I'd never seen before. This is a codicil to Vincent's will, dated exactly 1 week before his death. Would you like me to read the relevant section? My heart stopped. Tyler had gone pale. Regarding Tyler Martinez, Frank read aloud, son of my beloved wife Gloria, I have observed this young man carefully during his recent stay in our home. While he presents himself as a changed person, seeking reconciliation with his mother, his true motives have become clear to me. Tyler started to object, but his attorney put a restraining hand on his arm. Frank continued reading. Tyler Martinez has spent considerable time asking questions about my business assets, my investment portfolio, and my estate planning. He has researched California inheritance law on my home computer. He has made phone calls to attorneys while he believed I was sleeping. He is not here out of love for his mother, but as a predator seeking to exploit our family's tragedy for financial gain. The room was dead silent except for the sound of Tyler's heavy breathing. Therefore, Frank's voice grew stronger. I am taking the following actions. First, Tyler Martinez is explicitly disinherited from any claim to my estate, regardless of any technical legal relationship that might be argued. Second, should Tyler Martinez or anyone acting on his behalf attempt to contest this will or make any legal claim against my estate, the following consequences will take effect immediately. Frank looked directly at Tyler. All assets of the Romano estate, valued at approximately $16 million, will be immediately transferred to the Bakersfield Community College Foundation to establish the Vincent and Maria Romano Scholarship Fund for disadvantaged students pursuing careers in construction and engineering. Tyler shot to his feet. That's impossible. You can't disinherit someone based on speculation. Sit down, his attorney hissed, but Tyler was beyond listening. Furthermore, Frank continued calmly, I have video evidence of Tyler's deception. He pressed a button on his laptop, and suddenly Tyler's voice filled the conference room. It was a recording of him on the phone made during Vincent's final week. The old man is barely conscious most of the time. Tyler's voice said through the speakers, my mother's completely focused on playing nurse. She has no idea about the real value of his assets. Once he's dead, I'll have legal standing as the stepson. California law is clear about inheritance rights. Tyler's face went white as his own voice continued. She's too emotional to think straight. I just need to play the devoted son until he dies, then position myself as her protector during the legal proceedings. She'll sign over half the estate just to avoid a court battle. The recording clicked off. Tyler was staring at the laptop like it was a venomous snake. Vincent installed a security system after his stroke, Frank explained. He was concerned about his mental state and wanted to protect Gloria from anyone who might try to take advantage of his condition. Every conversation in that house was recorded for the past month. Tyler's attorney was already packing up her briefcase. I'm withdrawing from this case immediately. Tyler, don't say another word. But Tyler was beyond rational thought. You can't do this. That money should stay in the family. Interesting definition of family, Frank said dryly. Let me read you one more section of Vincent's codicil. He picked up another document. To my beloved wife Gloria, who has brought joy and purpose to my final years, you are the strongest, most loving woman I have ever known. Your son does not deserve you, but you deserve so much more than he has ever given you. Live your life fully, surrounded by people who value you as much as I do. You owe nothing to anyone who cannot love you without conditions. I was crying now, but they were tears of relief and gratitude. Even in his confused final weeks, Vincent had seen through Tyler's deception and protected me. Tyler slammed his hand on the conference table. This is fraud. That old man was mentally incompetent. He couldn't have written this. Actually, Frank said, Vincent wrote this codicil during one of his lucid periods, with myself and Dr. Patel as witnesses. His mental capacity was thoroughly documented. Your own behavior provided the evidence he needed to justify his decision. Tyler turned to me, his mask completely gone now. Mom, you can't let this happen. That money should be ours. We're family. I looked at this stranger who shared my DNA but nothing else, and felt something settle in my chest. Peace, maybe, or just the absence of guilt. Family doesn't steal emergency funds and disappear for 10 years, I said quietly. Family doesn't show up only when someone is dying. Family doesn't pretend to love you while secretly planning to rob you. I am your son. No, I said, standing up. My son died the day he decided money was more important than love. You're just someone who looks like him. 6 months later, I stood at the podium in Bakersfield Community College's new engineering building, addressing the first class of Vincent and Maria Romano scholars. 12 students, all from working-class families, all pursuing degrees in construction management and civil engineering. Vincent Romano believed that everyone deserves a chance to build something meaningful with their lives, I told the young faces looking up at me. These scholarships aren't charity, they're an investment in people who understand the value of hard work and honest effort. After the ceremony, a young woman named Isabella approached me. She reminded me of myself at that age, all determination and hope despite having to work 2 jobs to support her family. Mrs. Romano, thank you for believing in us. This scholarship means everything. Vincent believed in people who help themselves and their families, I told her. That's all you need to do. Build something good. As I drove home that evening, I passed the Roadhouse Diner where I'd worked all those double shifts. Joe waved at me through the window and I waved back. I'd visited a few times since Vincent died, not as an employee but as someone checking on old friends. I never heard from Tyler again after that day in Frank's office. I heard through Frank that Tyler had tried to hire other attorneys to contest the will, but Vincent's evidence was too overwhelming. Eventually, Tyler gave up and disappeared again, presumably to find some other family to exploit. I don't miss him. The Tyler I had loved, the little boy who used to need his mother, had been gone for years. The man who showed up at Vincent's funeral was just a stranger wearing my son's face. I kept Vincent's house but donated most of his expensive belongings to charity. I drive his old pickup truck now instead of the luxury sedan, and I tend Maria's garden every morning. I volunteer at the college 3 days a week, helping administer the scholarship program. Sometimes people ask if I'm lonely in that big house by myself. The truth is, I'm not alone. I'm surrounded by Vincent's love, by the memory of what real partnership feels like, and by the knowledge that I finally learned to value myself the way he valued me. Tyler taught me that love isn't guaranteed, even from family. But Vincent taught me something more important. I deserve love that doesn't come with conditions, and I deserve to protect that love from anyone who would use it against me. The best revenge isn't hurting someone who hurt you. It's building a life so good that their absence from it becomes a blessing instead of a loss. And that's exactly what I did. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Was I too harsh kicking Tyler out, or should family always get another chance? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like mine.